recording. So today we are talking about Musashi, who was the author of the Book of the Five Rings, and how he developed a strategy as a samurai warrior and what that can look like for your business. Uh-oh. So, first of all, let's talk about the plan of attack for today's lecture. So, first we'll understand the modern day battlefield that we're working with, that we're talking about, which is the marketing environment. Then we'll talk about who Musashi actually was. We will talk about a specific battle that he had that really epitomizes who he was and how he fought. And then we will talk about the lessons that we can pull from his battle strategy and how that can impact your business today. And then we'll go through a couple of case studies to show you how to actually utilize the information. So the battlefield today, one of the biggest problems we run into is there's so much chaos in the environment. Whether you're marketing online or television or radio, there's so much information out there, not only with different products, but also with information about how to do marketing. Clayton, do you have a question?
No, no, I'm good.
Oh, sorry, I thought you said something. It's really information overload, not just for us as business owners, but also for our customers. And one of the biggest problems I see is either A, people don't have a strategy, which technically is a strategy in itself of just winging it, or B, they're trying to imitate somebody else in their environment instead of realizing their competitive advantage and taking advantage of that. And so the entire lecture is all about understanding who you're fighting against and why you're fighting against them and figuring out your competitive advantage so you don't lose the battle before you even start. So who was Miyamoto Musashi? Well, he was an ancient samurai warrior. If you've ever seen anything about The Last Ronin or seen any movies, think of Rambo, or I know there's a new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie coming out called The Last Ronin. Well, he is the guy that they're actually talking about. He was a ancient samurai warrior that through his upbringing was kind of outcast by society and comes back and becomes one of the most successful samurai swordsmen. And then after he's bored with his competition, he retreats to the mountaintops and starts his own style of fighting. And really what he's talking about is when he was younger, he did have the competitive advantage of being the most powerful and the fastest. But as he aged, he was quickly outcompeted by his competition in physical strength and power and things like that. And so he became obsessed with strategy and how he can beat people just with his mind instead of his raw talent. So he is the author of the Book of the Five Rings. So after he gets bored, he retreats to the mountaintops and he writes this book called the Book of the Five Rings, which is the second most sold strategy book behind The Art of War. And in fact, this book is utilized in a lot of military strategy, but it's also passed around a lot of MMA circles and martial arts circles because of the mental strategy that he talks about. So I want to talk about the last duel that he had. So he fought 61 duels that were official duels, but he also fought a lot of unofficial duels when he was younger. He was undefeated through 61. And the 61 was the one that we're going to talk about, where he decides that he's bored with it and wants to do something different. So the very last one, he is fighting a guy named, how do we decide how to say it?
Kojiro.
Kojiro. Kojiro is also undefeated at the time. And he's this very large, powerful guy with a huge name. He comes from one of the most famous schools of fighting, and he's got a huge ego. He's somebody who relies on rage to fight, and Anybody who's fought MMA before knows that your rage and ego are the first ways to lose. And so Musashi studies this guy, and he understands everything about him. He understands that he is more powerful. He does have a longer reach because he's much bigger than Musashi. He also has a sword that is significantly longer than the typical katana, mainly because he's trying to utilize his strengths of having a long reach, and the longer sword gives him even more reach. So after Musashi studies him, and he realizes the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that he has in this duel, it's fought on an island. The duel is taking place on an island, and Musashi intentionally shows up late in a rowboat, doesn't even bring a sword. He fashions a katana out of an oar from his rowboat, and Kajaro is so upset that the second that Musashi steps onto the island, he throws down a scabbard, which I guess in those days meant that they are fighting to the death, that Kajaro has no intention of putting his katana back in its sheath until the battle's over, which Musashi has a great one-liner. I think he says something about the battle was over before it began, and basically saying he's already won the battle because he's irritated Kajaro so much. So Kajaro has this special move that he's killed just about everybody that he's fought with, and he lunges at Musashi. Musashi uses the sun to blind him because the sun's at Musashi's back, and with his oar overreaches and smacks Kajiro in the head, killing him instantly. So, if we break it down, Musashi actually writes about this, and you know he was one of the originals to create a rudimentary SWOT analysis, and he walks through how he prepared for this fight. And so he breaks it down. He looks at himself, and he says, "Okay, what are the strengths that I internally have over Kajiro?" And he has done. He actually studies Buddhism. And he creates a mindfulness practice where he is not fighting out of anger and rage. He has everything under control. So he says that his main advantage or his main strength is his temperance, where Kajaro is all about power and rage, and he's bigger. So Kajaro has the competitive advantage. If you think of the way they line up boxers, they talk about power and strength. And so, for all intents and purposes, Kajaro should have the competitive advantage in the fight. Musashi realizes that he is smaller and he's old at this point, so he doesn't have as much power as he used to. But he also realizes that Kajaro has a huge ego. Kajaro invites everybody out to witness him destroy this guy who's supposed to be, almost godlike in his power and his fighting ability, because he's going to kill him instantly. And he has this enormous ego that gets him in trouble when Musashi shows up late.
So are these fights like in an arena where everybody's called, the public is watching the fights and things like that?
Yes, think of like an old Western duel.
Okay.
So, where they challenge each other to a standoff, and it's you go out into the streets and the entire town's watching. That's a lot of this.
So much like a business, you put yourself out there. You're in the arena of people viewing you. Okay, cool.
Exactly. Yes. So when Musashi compares his strengths to Kijaro's weaknesses, he realizes that the major opportunity he has to win this battle is through the control of the psychological warfare. So he actually talks about the entire setup. So he didn't show up late because he was lazy. He showed up late because he knew it would trip the ego of Kijaro. So he also intentionally shows up on the side of the island that puts the sun at his back. And then the katana, the wooden katana, is another way of poking the bear, I guess, but irritating Kijaro to the point that when Musashi gets off his rowboat, Kijaro is so pissed that he charges after him, leaving all thought and control behind, and makes a mistake that Musashi can capitalize on. But he also knows that Kijaro is known for having an extremely powerful sword. If Musashi misses this one opportunity, then he's probably going to lose the fight. And in Kijaro's mind, he has no weaknesses. So Kijaro thinks he's just going to maul over this guy, and he doesn't take any time to develop a strategy. He's going to rely on everything that he's done the exact same way the entire time. So, after the fight, Musashi wins. He hits him in the head with this oar. I think I've already talked about that. Musashi retreats to a mountaintop and hides in a cave for a long time, and he develops his own method of martial arts in which he talks about how he developed his strategy. And so the Book of the Five Rings has 5 books, obviously. It's Earth, Water, Wind, Fire, and Void. So in his Earth teachings, he talks about the foundations. I had an opportunity one time to go to a Texas Rangers game. This is when I worked in sports, and we knew a lot of people that worked in the sports arenas. I was actually sitting in the dugout, and what I thought was most interesting was after the Rangers got done batting, there was a room behind the dugout that had a whole bunch of video equipment. And so if the Rangers struck out, or just about any at-bat, they could go in the background and watch their swing to continue to look at their fundamentals and continue to make sure that their swing is hitting all the fundamental aspects. My point being is, I don't care if you're Google or Average Joe's Coffee or Bob's Coffee that we'll talk about here in a little bit. You always have to go back and make sure you're covering the fundamentals. It is very important. That's what the big guys even do this. You can actually look up and Google people's strategy, or you can look at their 10Ks on the SEC, and they will talk about how they're going back to the fundamentals and how they're continuing to adapt and build on what they're doing. So that brings us to water. Water's all about adaptability. Mindy, I think you brought up a good point of how you have to be adaptable to capitalize on some of the markets. Can you explain a little bit about what you were saying earlier?
Well, just when you're starting to actually market and try out ideas, like it is trial and error. You've got to figure out what is working and what isn't. And so it's constantly adapting and tweaking and modifying what you're doing to reach a larger audience.
Yes, I think that's very important, of understanding how to identify your competitive advantages. And then I always like to call it's like a science experiment in a lot of ways. It's you come up with your hypothesis, you figure out a way to test it, and then you decide if it works or not. I guarantee you Cracker Barrel went through all of this and then it failed miserably. And so they had to go back to the basics, back to the fundamentals to understand where they went wrong.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wind is all about, it's all about understanding your strengths and weaknesses and where it sets in the market, and being able to mitigate your weaknesses. So we'll talk about a specific example here in a little bit, but it's, you can have all the knowledge in the world, but if you don't do anything about it, then you're just throwing money at the wind. So that brings us to fire, which is strike. How many entrepreneurs do you guys talk to that spend so much time planning, but they never actually do anything about it?
Absolutely.
So fire is all about getting out of your head, getting off the plan, and actually striking.
And I think that's a good point too. Is so many people plan and they think that's productive, and therefore it maintains them. They'll plan but not implement, and then maybe they'll implement a part of it, and they're not successful, so they'll go back and plan a little bit more. But they think they're highly engaged, but at the end of the day, they're not. The planning phase is not put into a plan,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah.
Yeah, and fear is a big component of that,
Yeah.
right? I mean, we were
Yes.
all like, "Oh, we've created this thing, and what if it's rejected? What if nobody signs up? What if nobody buys it? What if there's so many what ifs?" But fear can also drive you to step out in faith or your knowledge or your expertise, really, right? And just because what if it flies? Like you won't know until you strike, until you do
Right.
it.
And
Yeah,
you know
what
what?
if you try to record a video about something you've spent 2 years writing and you just get annihilated with critiques?
Well, the thing is too is it's really subjective because you could. How do you measure that you've arrived? Is it you come up with this idea, you bring it to market, you plan, and you've sold so many widgets, so you've got so many contracts. And could you have more? Are you comfortable of just having a sale and being happy with it? So I think I think that whole strike piece, Rob, is a part that as we move forward we'll dive into more. So.
Yeah.
And just to be a little transparent, I'm one of the worst about planning and planning and planning and not executing. So I'm sitting here looking at my screen and I have a deal pulled up that I spent about a week working on that I never implemented. So only because I just didn't strike, not because it was a bad idea.
Same.
So
Same.
even some of the best entrepreneurs I know fall into this trap as well.
Yeah.
And then the last one is void. And it's really taking the strategy that you've created and getting so good at it that it becomes second nature. So when you get into the battle, it's muscle memory. For the people that do that work out quite a bit or do MMA, a lot of the times when you're fighting, it's not your. You try to get to a point where you practice so much that it becomes second nature. Because if you're sitting there just thinking about it, you're going to lose because it takes time. And so a lot of it's just reactionary. And this can be the same in business is, I do a lot of networking. Clayton, I know you do too. Mindy, you do too. How many times have you been put on the spot like, okay, you have to pitch right now because this is a really good opportunity. So you can't stop to think about it. You just have to make it second nature. You guys run into that?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if you over prepare for, like, I've had a speaking engagement, prepared, and I forgot half of the stuff I was supposed to say.
Yep.
Whereas when I've just gotten up to say it, like it just flows. It's more authentic. It's more natural. It's not rehearsed, and I'm not like, damn it, I wish I would have said that. I should have said
Yes.
Or somebody will take you. There's always someone smarter in the room than you, and they like to show it. Obviously, and then when they take it down to that lane where you kind of just know something about it, which is part of your overall plan, it kind of makes you, for whatever reason, I think it sets you back sometimes, and obviously we feel less confident, and I should have been more prepared, but there is those people out there, and those are the competitors that want to see you fail. I mean, it's
Exactly. All right, so now I want to take everything we just talked about and give you a framework of how you can utilize this in your business. So first we'll talk about direct versus indirect competitors. Then we'll talk about the 4 Ps of marketing, which is something that is written in any marketing book you ever pick up. And then how to look at what you've created and what you've prepared to strike. So first, just real quick, we'll talk about competition and what that means. So your competitors are people who are vying for the exact same dollar that you are. I always like to take a step back here and mention that I don't look at all competitors as the enemy. A lot of times there's a lot of ways that you can work together. So when I worked in banking, I knew that some of my competitors had better products than I did. For example, the bank I was at, we were terrible at auto loans. And so I had a friend at a competitive bank. They were great at auto loans. And so when I had a customer that I really appreciated, that needed an auto loan, I would probably send them over to him. And that built trust between me and my customer and also with my competitors so that my customers knew that I was that I practiced with integrity, that I knew that I couldn't beat it, and my friend could. My friend also knew that he couldn't just steal my client, otherwise I wouldn't send him more. So we were really good at home equity lines. And so his bank was bad at it. And so we would reciprocate that way. There's several different strategies: blue ocean strategy, red ocean strategy. I like to think of my competitors as potential allies. There are people in the market that are enemies, and you just have to figure out how to mitigate what they're doing versus yourself.
Yeah, and I think you've. Go ahead, I'm sorry. Finish up, Rob. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
no, I was
Well, I
about
was
to move
saying,
on.
yeah, I was saying with the space that I'm in the networking space, in general, is that I look at the other networking groups out there, and some of them maybe on surface wise are competitors, but you look at groups like Mix and Mingle. I met both of you guys there, and Mix and Mingle had its focus for introductions, and basically after the one-on-ones, then you can take a deeper dive. And for me, I really have partnered with someone like Mix and Mingle because I met you two guys there, obviously, and I think others as well. So not seeing them as a competitor because they aren't, but also as an ally, because if people, once they get the introduction to networking, they want to go deeper, then they get into a group like ours. So you're absolutely right. I mean, I could look at them all as competitors, and even though some of them I feel I'm better than I want to crush, I try to avoid that. I try to avoid that temptation.
Right.
I think the other component to business, it's relational, right? Like if you are doing business with those you know, like, and trust, like, it's going to come back to you. Whereas if it's a no name, I mean, you're taking a risk, and a lot of consumers today they're not willing to take that risk. Not
Right.
not if it comes with a high price point, right?
Right.
So I think that speaks to all three of those
Yep, absolutely.
comments that you got there.
So there is a difference between direct and indirect competitors. So a direct competitor is somebody that's offering the exact same product as you. They're going after the exact same target market. They are competing at a head-to-head basis. Think of Ferrari and Lamborghini. They're both producing very high-end luxury sports cars. They are directly competing against each other. Clayton, you mentioned having networking competitors. Mix and Mingle would be a direct competitor because you're going after the exact same people, and really it's time more than it is money on that. So you're competing for everybody's time in the networking space. Where you really gain strength is how you differentiate yourself from the market, and that's exactly what you were talking about. The Mix and Mingles offer a very different product than you do. So even though you are direct competitors, you figured out how to differentiate yourself from them to where you can work together.
Right. Absolutely.
An indirect competitor is a competitor that's offering a very different product and service. They are competing for the exact same attention, budget, or solving the same problem. They're often overlooked, and we've talked about this and kind of joked about this a lot. How many clients do you guys have, or people that you talk to, that say they have no competitors?
Yeah, they think they don't, but there are plenty.
Yeah,
Right.
but it's usually because they're overlooking the indirect competitors, right?
Yeah.
Right. Right. And I was trying to relate to, on a simple relationship between networking. There's groups like Network in Action and Mix and Mingle and others. But then an indirect competitor may be a group of guys that go to a local church, they belong to a local club, and they start forming their own group of guys. And even though they don't call themselves a networking group, in the thing in every networking is time, right? So they're actually taking time, which I would be seeking from any business, but they're spending that time with a group that's not even called networking, just a group of folks that get together. So you're right, Rob. I mean, there is those little we don't even think about. I guess I should say.
Right.
So.
Yeah, my favorite example is when I worked in sports. I worked for a minor league baseball team out in Dallas. And so our direct competitors were the D-League basketball team for the Mavericks that were right next door to us, or some of the other minor leagues. I think the Grand Prairie Air Hogs were out there that at one point in time were great. But we also had to compete against the big boys, the Dallas Stars, the Dallas Mavericks, the Texas Rangers, all of them. To take it even further, we were also competing against all of the other entertainment venues. We were competing against the concerts and the symphonies and the plays. And we actually did pull data from Ticketmaster, and we could see everywhere else our clients were going, all the other tickets that they were buying. And so we determined that we were competing against all of the venues, not just the ones that were direct competitors.
Right. And what you were, both of you were both basically after was time, individuals' time, which were related, which was a direct correlation to revenue, basically.
Right, exactly.
People only have so much time, 24 hours a day, and they only have, and everybody's different in terms of revenue or income. So you're absolutely right. I mean, I love that example.
And so just to put this into perspective of how this works in the real world, we took everybody that we were competing against, both direct and indirect competitors, and we started asking, okay, what are the major complaints that our customers say in the marketplace? And if we use the Texas Rangers, for example, or the Dallas Cowboys, if you take a family of 4 out to a Cowboys game, let's use that one for an example, because it is an indirect competitor, and I'm trying to show that. But parking is like a minimum of $50. The tickets were, they range from $250 to a couple $1,000s. Then you get out to the venue, and you have your significant other and kids, is usually how we came up with the 4. You've got to buy hot dogs at $8 a pop. You got to buy beers at $12 or $20. You got to buy soft drinks at $8 a pop. It becomes extremely expensive by the time you look at the entire outing. And the majority of our clients, they were busy. They didn't have the time to do that. So we looked at that, and we decided, okay, how can we make this more affordable for a family of 4? And so our tickets were actually priced higher than most of our competitors. We sold our tickets at about $20 a piece, depending on the package. But it included parking and unlimited hot dogs and food and beer and wine. And so, yes, our upfront cost was a little bit more expensive, but the entire outing was much, much cheaper, and you could budget for it. And so we won a lot of competitors that said, you know what, going out to the Texas Rangers is fun, but my kids are too young to remember it, and they're going to eat 12 hot dogs, and it's going to cost a fortune. Or I can go out, I can see a similar level of baseball. I can see the guys before they're coming up, and I know exactly how much they're going to spend.
Yeah, and I think that's brilliant, because there must be some matrix on ticket sales. Just ticket sales standing alone against the competitors' ticket sales, because you're actually, you know what I'm saying? Because your ticket sales bundled everything in it, so it made it
Right.
a little more attractive, obviously. Cool.
Yeah, just to toot our own horn, I did get a call from the Texas Rangers one time thinking, I'm moving up, this is great. And they were really upset at me for stealing a bunch of their customers. So
Well,
we
it's funny.
did outcompete them in a lot of ways, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, just to give you an idea, kind of an entrepreneur mind, how my mind works, I'm sitting here thinking, wow, I wonder if there's an opportunity if we did that with other venues out there that we know of right now, you and all 3 of us, that we could go and say, hey, let's just package something together, and we can help you guys get more traffic. I mean, but that's how the rabbit hole my head goes down. So.
All right, so once you identify your direct and indirect competitors, then you start you start analyzing them and trying to figure out your competitive advantage. And if you're just looking at them at a face value, sometimes it can be really difficult to understand where your competitive advantage is. So to break it down even further, to help you, I always break it up by the product, price, place, and promotion. I actually came about this type of ideology when I was playing sports. One of my college coaches said, if you're a starter, because I was a pitcher, if you're a starter and you're just looking at the game based on 9 innings, there is always a lull in the inning 4, 5, and 6. because that's where it doesn't. You've started the game, so the energy was up in the beginning of the game, and then you kind of have this lull, and then the energy comes back in innings 7, 8, and 9 when it really matters. So what my coach suggested was mentally breaking down a 9-inning game into 3 3-inning games. And if you win all 3 3-inning games, A, it's easier to imagine as a mental mindset, and B, you stay focused through all 3 of those games. And so that's kind of the same idea that I use here. If I'm looking at a competitor and I'm just trying to compare them, from what I see online or something, it may be really difficult to try to understand my competitive advantage. But if I break it down by these 4, it becomes much easier. So it takes a little bit more work, but it becomes easier mentally to understand where the competitive advantage is. So what I always do is I take my product, and because I'm an analyst, I have to have, kind of the baseline. So I say, okay, what does my product look like, and what does their product look like? And then same with price, place, and promotion. And the way this can really benefit yourself is I like to use the example of price in particular, because I get asked about pricing all the time. And I've sat through all of the seminars, I've done all the research on these very complicated pricing structures. And really what it boils down to is people are only going to pay what they perceive the value is. Mm-hmm. And so you can get super complicated, but they are only going to pay what they think you're providing. And, a lot of people that I run into always just want to undercut the market, especially inexperienced entrepreneurs. I think of, I had a bunch of students that wanted to start a lawn business one time. And I said, okay, how are you going to compete against everybody else in the market? And they said, we're just going to do it cheaper. Problem is, A, if you cut your price, people are going to perceive you as being a lesser product. And B, you end up putting a hell of a lot of time and effort into it, and you can put yourself out of business really quick if you're not covering your expenses. Mm-hmm. And so with my strategy, you look at price, and I'll get into this later, and this becomes a little bit more advanced, so don't worry about doing this yet. But I always try to find somebody who's really good in the market, the type of player that I want to be like, but I don't have the resources to be like just right now. Then I try to find somebody who is the bottom of the market. These are the people that I don't want to be like at all. And that kind of sets the ranges of my price point. So the people that I want to be like, hopefully, have a higher price point because they are providing a superior product. And the people I don't want to be like sets the bottom of the price range because they are offering an inferior product, a product that I want to differentiate myself from. And so you can kind of set your price right in the middle. Does that all make sense? Do I need to go through all of them?
No, that's good.
No. A caveat for a lot of clients that I've worked with in the past is, they set the price, let's say it's $1,200, and they decide they want to run a promotion, right? And there's a sweet spot with promotion, right? Whether it's a week, 2 weeks, or it's a month. Well, if it's longer than 10 to 14 days, you've reset your price.
Yes.
To that lower price. And so I think that's something people have to be mindful of when they start thinking, oh, I'm going to discount my services. If you already have an established widget, service or product, and you want to discount it, I mean, there's a difference in, hey, I have this to sell, and it's for sale. It's not on sale.
That's actually a really good point. So when we did this for the Rough Riders, we looked at the D-League basketball team as like our competitor that we didn't want to be like. And the reason we didn't want to be like them is because they would give away their tickets. And so when it came time for their customers to buy tickets, they got butts in the seats, but nobody would actually buy their tickets. And they couldn't figure out why. It's because they gave them away. If I can get it for free, why would I pay for it?
If I wait 4 more days, I can just get it for free.
Exactly.
Well, I think also, all of us are, in some regards, business consultants for different folks and stuff. But, sometimes, like for my video advertising business, it takes just as much energy to me to find a client, to do a presentation, and basically the work behind the scenes, but all the promo materials to engage somebody, to sell them a $5,000 a month video ad campaign, it takes just as much energy for me to do that for someone who wants to spend $150 a month.
Yeah.
And so, I think that setting that price, even, and mine's pretty consistent in the 150 compared to say the $5,000 or $10,000 a month is based on the number of units they do buy. But why wouldn't I want to play in the playground of the $5,000 to $10,000 a month people as opposed to the,
Right.
but I don't. I mean,
So just to kind of give a quick rundown, just to explain what I'm looking at when I compare myself. Product, I'm looking at all the features and benefits and comparing it to my own. And so if, like when I talked about the baseball tickets, the feature was that we could offer a ticket at a similar price as the Rangers, even though, that would have been the high end of our price point. We could offer features and benefits that outproduced them. And so it wasn't that we were trying to compete head to head saying that we were a better product than the Rangers. It was we can offer additional benefits to help differentiate ourselves. With place, I like to compare, I'm a baseball guy, obviously, so I like to compare Wrigley Field and Fenway Park to the new Texas Rangers Stadium. I've been to all three of them. And, the new Texas Rangers Stadium I walked into, and it's like a completely different environment. Like, it was spectacular, absolutely amazing. And you walk into Fenway Park, and it's, rusty and old, but it's so cool being around the history that they try to keep intact. So my point is, sometimes, like, if you're comparing this just on a linear level, you would say, oh, well, Fenway Park is rusty and it's old, so that's a weakness. But they have taken their weakness and turned it into a strength. And then promotion is just how you're reaching your clients. Do you guys have anything else to add to that?
No, I don't think
no,
so.
and I think, for everybody watching and viewing this, is we're going to be going as we go down through these sessions, that we'll be going into deeper detail of every one of these topics.
Yep. All right, so then once I've compared once I've compared myself to one of my competitors, then I start breaking down the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And this is exactly what Masashi did when he compared himself to Kojiro. And so he looked at himself, he said, okay, what are my strengths versus my competitors? What are my weaknesses versus my competitors? And then based on those two things, how do I capitalize on my strengths and how do I mitigate my weaknesses? And then what are the additional threats that I have to be aware of in the long term? And so instead of going into too much detail, we'll just dive in and show how we can actually utilize this in our own businesses and then build on it as we go. So Clayton, we said that we were going to use NIA as an example here, right?
Yes.
Or or is coffee easier to do?
Well, probably let's do coffee because it's tangible. I think it's really not that we aren't, but it is actually a product. I think which makes.
Okay. So if we were going to run through this type of analysis, and this is a very entry level way of doing this. This is if you have no experience doing this is how you can do it on quickly. So let's assume that you is a coffee shop. Let's call it Bob's Coffee. Our strengths are that, and we're going to compare ourselves to, let's say, Starbucks, right? So the strengths that we have is we're a local brand. We are out in the community. We're talking. People can actually walk up to us and talk to the owner, right? Versus Starbucks, you're working with a big national that's very. There's no touch points there. You walk in, your barista is some high school kid that's just trying to make a buck, and that's it. It's very sterile.
Bob's Coffee knows your name. Like
Yep.
cheers.
Bob's
Yeah,
Coffee.
a totally different customer journey. Totally different.
Exactly. Great point. So the weakness is that Starbucks has a big national presence. They're in I don't know how many cities, multiple locations in each city. If I say Starbucks, 99% of people are going to know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So what would you guys
It was also like, hey, let's go grab a coffee, and they're like, oh, Starbucks. I'm like,
Right. Exactly. It's almost like Google. It's almost become a verb, right?
yes.
So what would you guys say the weakness of Starbucks is? compared to Bob's Coffee?
I think there's an intimidation factor, not knowing how to order your drink. Whereas, at Bob's Coffee, it's a simpler menu, and it's less complicated.
Right.
Yeah.
By the way, for the listeners, Bob's Coffee is completely hypothetical. We're kind of making it up as we go. So,
Yeah, and I think the thing about Starbucks, I mean, unlike a McDonald's product, at Starbucks, the buildings aren't consistent. The size isn't consistent. The layout, what I don't like, and I always find them very noisy. If I want to just get a cup of coffee, but really coffee shops have turned into meeting places for a lot of us in business. And I think so. So I find Starbucks, it's kind of sterile. I actually went to one the other day that they had to have a passcode to go use the bathroom. Because of what it was. Yeah, I think it was up on. Well, I think they were about homeless people coming in or whatever. But the point is it seems just very sterile, very boilerplate to me. I mean, even though they got a good brand, it's very boilerplate.
so then how would you guys, what are the opportunities that you see for Bob's Coffee in light of Starbucks as a competitor, based on the strengths and weaknesses that we just talked about?
I think the opportunity is in the community.
Exactly.
Definitely having that local reach, and if you're needing fundraiser for your kids' team for whatever, maybe it's band, whatever extracurricular club thing it is, like your Bob's Coffee is more likely to support in that regard because they are local, they are in your community, they're doing all those things. There's a direct touch point. Whereas with Starbucks, it's going to have to climb all the way up the corporate ladder to get any sort of approval there.
Exactly.
Yeah, and even the product line, I think too. Sometimes Starbucks, you get your venti and your tall and all those things, and I think, and those are all corporate made ingredients and so forth. Where there is that flexibility, I think, in a small shop to be more creative in terms of, I go to a coffee shop, which I really love in Bethany, across from the university, and they actually put cayenne pepper in their coffee, which is like really cool. It's a mix. So I think you have a lot of the opportunity is being a little more creative in your company. So
I was there's some comedic skit about some guy trying to order a medium coffee at Starbucks. Like, oh, you want a venti? No, I want a medium coffee. I don't know what venti means.
yeah, exactly.
There's a large, by the way.
Is it? I don't even know. All right, so threats. As we compare ourselves to Starbucks, what are the things that we have to be very mindful of so we don't allow Starbucks to force us out of the market?
Well, I think marketing is a huge factor, right? Like, there's a lot of dollars behind the Starbucks brand and their marketing capabilities, and the fact that they're, in some cities, they're on every 2-block corner. And so I think that threat is to think you have to compete at that level when it's unrealistic to do so.
Right.
Yeah, another threat is many moons ago I used to be in the Italian restaurant pizza business. I had up in Maine, and really nobody was selling spaghetti dinners, and really very rarely was people selling pizza. Unless you went to like the Pizza Huts of the world. But once I started driving my volume, guess what? More pizza shops started being created. And I think if they're in a market right now where you don't have a Starbucks, say in the same town, but it's 2 towns over, you can, and through their budget and through their research, you can probably bet they're looking at your market as well, or someone in that community is going to buy a franchise to say, hey, Bob's selling a lot of coffee, and I see a long line there. So that's the threat, is budget, like you said, Mindy, and marketing, and also just a team of, researchers to go out there and do analytics on, is it profitable,
Yeah.
I actually know for a
I think there's
fact
business
that
you haven't been in. I mean, I didn't know you had a pizza joint. Goodness. Healthcare,
Care,
hospitality.
Yeah,
networking, pizza,
yeah,
coaching.
Right.
yeah. Yeah, and my dream was to be the governor of Maine. If I was a county commissioner, long stories quickly, and I wanted to be if I got elected to as a state legislature, I lost a race by 21 votes. I knew I probably could have worked my way up, but that's no one elects old white guys now, so.
Okay.
Well,
Rob, back to
I digress. The going back to digressions.
I know for a fact that Starbucks does do a lot of data analysis on competitors in the marketplace. In fact, one of their strategies is to put a Starbucks right next to the local coffee shop because they know their brand presence is so much bigger that they can force them out of the market. So
Yeah.
I actually saw this happen in Chickasha. There was, what was the name of that coffee shop? I can see the sign, but I can't think of the name. Either way, it was a locally owned coffee shop. I really liked it. I thought it was a cool place. And Starbucks went directly across the street. And within a year, that locally owned coffee shop was out of business.
yeah.
So I know that
Well,
they
you
look
notice when
very
you look.
much.
Well, in terms of
Ahead.
market research, you know that when you go and take a look at a Walgreens, there's probably a CVS close by. It used to be when you see a McDonald's, you see a Burger King. My thought was always, who did the market research first? I mean, who got there first? Because they'll just follow along behind. You're so right, Rob, because they're looking for brand recognition. So these small towns that the small guy, you're right. I mean, they're actually seeking those locations out. I mean, it's
Viridian Coffee. I just thought of it. Viridian Coffee was the local one that went in, and within a year they were out of business.
Yeah, we had a meeting there. Remember, we had a meeting one month, and all of a sudden they went out of business. Yeah, I remember
Yep.
that.
Yep. All right. So this is kind of this is the bare basics of what you can do very quickly. You see how we just assessed it within, a couple minutes. If you want to get more complex with it, break down, like I said, create a range of the type of people that you want to compare yourself to. So, like I said, I always pick 3 people in the market that I want to compare myself to, a competitor that's at the top of their game, that is somebody that I want to strive to be like. That way I can set my goals and I can I can learn a lot from those people. Then I pick somebody in the market who's doing things exactly like I don't want to do it. This would be the D League basketball team that we were competing against in Dallas. And you can learn a lot from people doing it wrong, and learn all of the things that you do not want to do. And then I try to pick somebody who's kind of in the middle that has very similar resources to what I do. And that's really, you can learn a lot in the market about what works and what doesn't work based on what they're doing, or more so how to differentiate yourself from those 3 competitors.
Yeah. And I think maybe if it's hard to look at that way, we've all had a boss that was terrible. And we vowed to ourselves, if I become a boss, I'm not doing it this way.
Yes.
It's that same thing when you're looking
Yes.
at a business, that same thing.
I think I've learned more about leadership and looking at bosses that I hated than I ever did great bosses that I had.
Yeah,
So.
it's so funny you say that. In my career, the same way. I mean, I realized that I didn't want to be that guy, that gal that did that, and whatever happened to me. And I learned more from bad bosses than I did from good bosses about
Exactly.
how to create your own, your own style and so forth.
Yeah.
Yep. And then, if you want to take it to the samurai level, you can do this with your direct competitors and your indirect competitors. So, just to recap, at the beginning level, you're just comparing yourself to one competitor. And that's going to give you a lot of good information. If you want to take it to the next level, you're comparing yourself to 3 competitors. And if you want to take it to the samurai level, you're doing 6, but 3 direct and 3 indirect competitors. Gets really confusing. If you want help with that, we can, the 3 of us can put our heads together and get there. But one thing to remember is, just like we were talking about with Starbucks, this is exactly what they do. I know that because I've worked in that level of business. There are analysts that get paid hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of dollars to do this data. So we can't just give you the script and tell you, you've never studied this, you've never done this, so go out and, enjoy the way that they do it without, taking some steps to work up to that goal.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's a good point, Rob, because the expertise that you give us and Mindy and we have in the group is that obviously if anybody wants to take a deeper dive into this is what you get paid to do. This is and I think on the peripheral we're giving everybody an opportunity to really take that look at your business, and because I think this is eye-opening to me. I'm going to tell you, I'm looking at how I'm viewing what I'm doing, and I think that we need to take that look at our businesses, and like Rob mentioned, that Mindy and him are available to help implement this on a higher level than just this kind of whetting your appetites, but really which could be a major difference in your business, a major difference.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and
absolutely.
you should do this regularly, right? Like
Yes.
so many businesses that I've worked with. One, I don't know that some of them ever had a strategy. They were just like, "Hey, I developed this thing, and it's the best. I'm going to go into business for myself." And that's why they hired me.
Right.
Because they didn't know the rest of the stuff. But other businesses, they might have had a strategy, when they first started, or they developed that strategy in year 2 or year 3. But it's now year 10 and they haven't gone back to look at it. Are we still staying true to that? And how much of the market's changed, especially with COVID, right? Like so
Yes.
many businesses, they basically died with COVID because they didn't adapt. I know a coffee shop in Stillwater, the other one's closed, even, because they didn't adapt. They had to remain closed until people could come back in the doors. But there was one in particular that he created a little market in his coffee shop. He had grains, he had toilet paper, he had flour. He had the things that people needed, and if they didn't want to go to the store, but they still came to him for coffee, well, they could pick up a pound of flour. He worked with another local business to have frozen foods in there. So he really adapted to his offering, and he made quite a bit of money during that time because he was able to adapt and meet the need of the community.
I think COVID's kind of the perfect example of this, is how many people, tried to continue to do business the exact same way that they were doing before COVID, during COVID, and, we don't know their names anymore. They're gone.
Right.
So, Mindy, my question to you is, how often would you recommend somebody look at this type of stuff? Is it once a year, once a quarter, once a month?
I think at minimum annually. I think the best practice would just be to kind of look at it every quarter and go, okay, are we still staying relevant? Are we still working along our business strategy, or do we need to adapt? Do we need to be like the water, and kind of adapt, and maybe we've uncovered some weaknesses that we need to be more like the ring of the wind and mitigate that. So I think it's, worst case you're looking at it annually, best case you're looking at it quarterly. And if you have I know bandwidth is an overused term a lot, but if you have the space and capacity to actually look at it monthly, that might, be of a great benefit to you. But I would say at minimum quarterly.
Yep.
Well, monthly would be having your measurement or your indicators that you need to track to make sure you're on the plan. So I think that monthly thing is kind of ongoing, because if you have but yeah, I think it's, I was just thinking, because I have an online Christian business group. I have about 3,000 members. I was even thinking about, Rob, doing a poll of people who actually think they have a strategy, because my experience in business, I'm going to say very, very, they think they do, but they don't have a detailed one. And I think you're so right, Mindy. It's kind of like a lot of businesses, and I think people that sell for companies fly by the seat of their pants, or if they have a strategy, it ain't working as efficiently as it should be because they haven't looked at it. And
Right.
Well, and one thing that I'd like to point out is this is 8-week course, 7-week course, depending on how we do it.
Yeah.
And this should all work with each other. So we're going to learn about developing your strategy here. When we start talking about branding, you may realize that something in your strategy doesn't make sense once you start building in your brand, and you can go back to this and update it as you continue to go through the program. Another thing is when we get to marketing, we will talk a lot about those key performance indicators and what they mean, how to track them, and then that's a good way to decide, is your strategy working? Maybe you need to go back to step one if it's not, and figure out why it's not working. So while this is in a linear type environment where I'm giving you steps to get to a complete business model, it is circular in the sense that if you change one thing in the end, you may have to go back to step one and update it all the way through.
Yeah. And I think that's right, Rob. I think the beautiful thing what you're doing is that we have people that have expertise and skills that can actually help people as we get down this road. And you talk about taxation, talk about branding. We've got people with an NIA, and including you two guys as well, that can help people right now. I'm not talking go out shopping for someone. I think I know what you're doing, Rob, is going to generate a lot of interest in people, whether they're a network in action or not at this point in time. But I think the whole idea is that we have some expertise that we're willing to share with people. And if you want to go deeper, obviously that's your business. That's you have to engage and build a relationship with those folks. So
Yeah.
very
Yeah,
good.
my hope out of this is to give you the tools to start analyzing your business on your own and understand where you need help and where you're doing things right. So just like we were talking about with noise, how many social media influencers are out there every day saying, this is how you do sales, and this is how you do this, and this is how you do. What if we could narrow it down to the things that you know that you need help with, so you can, maybe you don't need more. I was thinking about this yesterday, Clayton. I had a client one time. This is when I was at the university. So we were putting students into businesses to get real world experience, right? And there was a brand new winery in town. And so they're new. And so my initial assumption was they need more people coming through the door, right? And so we'll talk about sales here in a minute, but I didn't ask enough questions when I went in to pitch them about putting our students in, and I just assumed I knew that they needed more people walking in. So I go in with this pitch about, we'll get your students in here, we'll produce marketing materials, yada, yada, yada. We'll get more people in the door just based off that. And as I started asking more questions, I realized he didn't have a problem getting people in the door. He had a problem with supply. And so actually getting more people in the door would have been bad for him. And so my point is, don't just assume you know all this stuff. Actually go do the research. And what I hope to give you are the tools to be able to get a baseline and then continuing to do research in your market and understand the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of the people that are coming up. And just to your point, COVID, regulatory legislation, all of those things can have a deep level impact of your business, and if you're not paying attention to it, it could uproot you.
Yeah. There's something I read a long time ago that if you took 1 hour a week, the number one, take us for personal development, 1 hour a week to learn the job that you're in. Say if you're a CEO of something, learn about that job and learn about your industry. You would be in the top 5% of the people in your industry. This is, Rob, I think you're creating with this, is we're giving our members a chance to be in that higher percentage, because nobody does this on the conglomerate. No one does it for the most part.
Yeah, there's a reason we call this the Bootcamp, because it's all the stuff you don't want to do. It's hard, but it's going to make you significantly better.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
All
we're
right,
here to
well,
help you.
do what?
We're here to help you.
Exactly. So it does suck. But suck is where you get better.
Exactly.
Embrace the suck. Isn't that what David Goggins says?
That sounds like a t-shirt.
Sounds like a t-shirt. All right. Is there anything else that you guys would want to, that we haven't talked about this, or I think we've talked a lot about it. So
I think we're good. I think
Yeah,
that's,
I think thank you very much, Rob and Mindy, for doing this for for Network in Action, and I really think that we're trying to distinguish ourselves, our group, it is our group, and trying to distinguish ourselves as a leader in not only networking but masterminds in the OKC Metro, and like I said, thank you for the time you've put in, Rob and Mindy, because this is only the beginning, guys. I mean, our whole goal is to make you better at what you do. So,
yeah.
great.
All right.
very
End
good.
the recording right there.